It was just a phone call at this point. It signals the fact that he accepted a congratulatory call. President-elect Trump is not out there making policy or announcing new policy prescriptions worldwide.
The response from the Chinese government in the aftermath of this call has primarily been to ratchet up the rhetoric against Taiwan. And it's unclear to me how that kind of consequence benefits the people of Taiwan.
I've been involved in this relationship for a lot of years, and this is the first time I've ever seen a real business person who understands leverage and understands a fair deal and a level playing field.
John Huntsman, perhaps playing for Secretary of State as he gets ready for his own interview. He's one of the on a long list, expanding list. We'll get into that in just a minute. But the phone call between the president-elect and the president of Taiwan, a congratulatory call, prompted all this reaction. And Donald Trump on Twitter kind of reacting to China's reaction. Did China ask us if it was okay to devalue their currency, making it hard for our companies to compete, heavily tax our products going into their country, the U.S. doesn't tax them, or to build a massive military complex in the middle of South China Sea? I don't think so. Now, there are multiple stories that this was a planned shift, and all this hubbub is about nothing. Let's bring in our panel. Jonah Goldberg, senior editor at National Review. Mara Eliason, national political correspondent of National Public Radio and editor-in-chief of Life Zet. Laura Ingram. Jonah, there was a ton of reaction over the weekend.
There was, and I will say, as someone who thinks that Chiang Kai-shek was the rightful ruler of China, not Mao, that I have no problem with the idea of sending this kind of signal, messing with China, starting out strong and all the rest. The problem is, if that was the intent, as the Washington Post story today implies and other reporting backs up, then why were Kellyanne Conway and Mike Pence out there selling a different story? I mean, the messaging behind the decision is schizophrenic. But if this is part of sort of some strategic ambiguity and all that, we can give them the benefit of the doubt. I have no problem playing hardball with China, but the messaging doesn't back that up.
Mark Thiessen, who didn't start out as a big Trump fan, writes, Donald Trump's phone call with the president of Taiwan wasn't a blunder by an inexperienced president-elect, unschooled in the niceties of cross-straits diplomacy. It was a deliberate move and a brilliant one at that. He goes on to say the very idea that Trump could not speak to Taiwan's president because it would anger Beijing is precisely the kind of weak-kneed subservience that Trump promised to eliminate as president, and goes on to defend that. Laura, what about the messaging here?
Well, I think Jonah raises a good point. You want a unified front on the messaging of this call. I do think it's quite something that the United States is supposed to check in with China before they take phone calls from world leaders. An ally of ours that, we have the Taiwan Relations Act that has been reconfirmed and supported again and again every time it comes up for consideration, even in an informal matter. Democrats, Marco Rubio, others, we always reaffirm our support for Taiwan, our reassurances for Taiwan. I mean, under the Taiwan Relations Act, we could potentially have to militarily intervene if China decides to move against Taiwan. We kind of put that all aside because of our belief in globalization, or at least our former belief in globalization. But this is a serious deal, what's been done, and the pressure that has been put on countries in the region, especially the concern about the shipping and the transit through that South China Sea. I think Jonah's exactly right. This was a move by Trump to show that, look, there's a new game in town. We're not going to be your patsy anymore. And I think it's welcomed by most in the United States.
Perhaps more an exclamation point on Twitter over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump has said, hey, I did this on purpose. He has presented a tougher posture towards China in all of his tweets. And I agree with Jonah. I don't understand why his spokespeople would go out there and undercut this. Even months and months and months ago, John Bolton, other advisors to Trump, have laid out a argument for why the U.S. should get tougher with China by making these steps to be friendlier to Taiwan. In other words, this is a stated, explained policy change from the Trump brain trust. And, Barack Obama tried to pivot to Asia and then kind of gave up. But the idea was that China does need to be checked. China is getting to be more of a hegemon in that region of the world, and we need to do more there. So here's Trump doing it. I don't know why his people would undercut him on that.